December 1872. Somewhere in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean, a ship is still sailing, sails up, cargo intact, food on the table, and not a single living soul on board. Not one. No bodies, no blood, no distress signal, no explanation. Just an empty ship, drifting, as if everyone on board had simply stopped existing, and no one knows why. This is the story of the Mary Celeste, the most baffling maritime mystery in recorded history. And over 150 years later, nobody has solved it. To understand what happened on that ship, you first need to understand who was on it. The Mary Celeste was a 282-ton brigantine, a merchant sailing vessel built in 1861 in Nova Scotia, Canada. She wasn't glamorous. She wasn't famous. She was a working ship built to carry cargo across the Atlantic. But here's the thing. Before this voyage, the Mary Celeste already had a reputation, and it wasn't a good one. She'd been launched under a different name, the Amazon, and almost immediately things started going wrong. Her first captain died of pneumonia during the maiden voyage. She was damaged in a collision not long after, then ran aground off Cape Breton Island. She changed hands multiple times. Sailors talked quietly, the kind of stories you don't say out loud at sea. By the time she was sold to her new owners in 1869, renamed and refitted, she had the quiet reputation of a ship that bad luck followed. Her new captain was Benjamin Briggs, 37 years old, a deeply religious man, a teetotaler, a respected and experienced sea captain who'd made dozens of Atlantic crossings without incident. Before setting sail, Briggs wrote a letter to his mother. In it, he described the voyage as a routine job, nothing to worry about. He wrote that the weather looked reasonable. The cargo was straightforward. He expected to be in Italy before Christmas. He was so relaxed about the journey that he brought his wife Sarah and their 2-year-old daughter Sophia along for the trip. His 7-year-old son Arthur stayed behind in Marion, Massachusetts to attend school. Arthur never saw his father again, and no one ever found out why. The crew numbered 7 in total, a mix of nationalities, most of them experienced sailors. 2 of them were brothers, Volkert and Boy Lorenzen, German-born seamen. On November 7th, 1872, the Mary Celeste departed New York Harbor. Her hold carried 1,701 barrels of industrial alcohol, denatured, poisonous, not intended for drinking, bound for Genoa, Italy. The crossing began normally. The logbook recorded rough weather in the first 2 weeks, but nothing out of the ordinary for an Atlantic voyage in winter. And then the entries stop. November 25th, 1872, the last entry in the Mary Celeste's logbook. It places the ship 6 miles from Santa Maria, one of the Azores Islands. Nothing unusual is noted, no distress, no panic, just a routine navigation entry. And then, silence. The logbook just stops. 9 days pass, no sightings, no signals, nothing. December 4th, 1872. The British brigantine Dei Gratia is sailing the same stretch of ocean, about 400 miles east of the Azores. Captain David Morehouse spots something through his telescope. A ship, moving erratically, sails partially raised, badly rigged, being thrown by the wind. Morehouse looks closer. His blood runs cold. He recognizes her. And in that moment, he knows something is wrong. It's the Mary Celeste. Now, here's a detail that makes this even stranger. David Morehouse and Benjamin Briggs were friends. The 2 captains had actually dined together in New York just days before both ships departed. Morehouse knew that ship. He knew that crew, and he knew something was very, very wrong. He ordered his first mate, Oliver DeVoe, to take a small boarding party across. What they found on that ship has never been fully explained. DeVoe climbed aboard the Mary Celeste and was immediately struck by one thing. Silence. Not the calm kind. The wrong kind. The ship was in good condition. Seaworthy. Which made everything worse. In the galley, the kitchen, there was food. Personal belongings were still there. Clothes, boots, pipes, money. Everything you would take if you were leaving for good. 6 months' worth of food and water remained in the stores. They weren't planning to abandon ship. The cargo, all 1,701 barrels of alcohol, was in the hold. Well, almost all of it. 9 barrels were empty, mysteriously so. Though later investigations suggested these 9 were made of red oak, a more porous wood that tends to leak. There were no signs of fire, no signs of struggle, no weapons drawn. The captain's table in his cabin had a half-eaten meal sitting on it. Some accounts describe it as still warm, though this detail has been disputed over the years. But here is what was missing. And this is where things stop making sense. The ship's only lifeboat, gone. Captain Briggs's navigational instruments, gone. The ship's papers and documents, gone. One of the pumps, disassembled, as if someone had been trying to fix something, fast. The sounding rod, the device used to measure water in the hull, found lying out on deck, 3.5 feet of water in the hold, not enough to sink the ship, but enough to scare someone. There was one more thing. In the captain's cabin, DeVoe found a sword. He picked it up. On the blade, what appeared to be traces of blood. Later analysis, much later, determined it probably wasn't blood at all. Rust, marine residue, nothing conclusive. But for a moment, standing alone on a ghost ship in the middle of the Atlantic, that sword must have felt like a very dark clue. DeVoe's crew sailed the Mary Celeste 800 miles to Gibraltar. The voyage took 8 days. In Gibraltar, the British Vice Admiralty Court convened a salvage hearing. A man named Frederick Solly Flood was put in charge, the Attorney General of Gibraltar. Solly Flood was not a man who believed in coincidences. He had a theory, and it changed everything. Briggs and Morehouse, the two captains who had dined together in New York, had cooked up an insurance fraud scheme. Briggs had somehow disposed of his crew, hidden himself on the Dei Gratia, and Morehouse would sail in to find the Mary Celeste and claim the salvage. It sounds dramatic, but Solly Flood was convinced. He dug into every detail, interviewed everyone, had the ships physically inspected, and found absolutely nothing. No evidence, no motive, no crime. After months of investigation, the court found no evidence of foul play, no evidence of fraud, and no evidence of any crime whatsoever. The salvage crew of the Dei Gratia were paid, but only 1/6 of the total insured value of $46,000. That reduced payment hints that the authorities were suspicious, but couldn't prove a thing. Captain Briggs, his wife, his daughter, and all 7 crew members were never found. Not a single body. Not a single piece of wreckage from the lifeboat. Nothing. Theory 1. Mutiny. The crew rose up against Captain Briggs, killed the family, and fled. It makes a good story, but it falls apart immediately. All of the crew's personal belongings, including their money, were left behind. People who commit mutiny don't leave their wages on the table, and there was no blood, no weapon marks, no signs of violence anywhere on the ship. The Lorenzen brothers had lost their possessions in a shipwreck earlier that year, which explained why their belongings weren't found on board. Mutiny? Almost certainly not. Theory 2. Pirates. But wouldn't pirates have taken the cargo? 1,701 barrels of alcohol, worth a fortune. Pirates who board a merchant vessel and leave the cargo untouched, the food uneaten, the money in the quarters. That's not how pirates operate. Ruled out, completely. Theory 3. Insurance fraud, the Briggs-Morehouse plot. We've already covered Solly Flood's theory, but it doesn't hold up either. Briggs owned a share of the Mary Celeste himself. Why would he abandon his own investment? And what happened to his wife and 2-year-old daughter? No fraud scheme requires killing a toddler. Not credible. Theory 4. Alcohol fumes and panic. This is where it gets interesting, because for the first time, something actually fits. Those 9 empty barrels of red oak, more porous than white oak, may have leaked. Alcohol vapor in an enclosed hold can build up fast. If a hatch was opened and fumes surged out, it could have looked and felt like the ship was about to explode. Captain Briggs, a cautious, religious man, might have made the call to get everyone into the lifeboat immediately, just as a precaution. Get away from the ship, let the fumes dissipate, then row back. But the fumes wouldn't have caused an explosion with this type of alcohol, just a flash. Briggs may not have known that. This theory is considered by many modern investigators to be the most plausible explanation. Theory 5. The sounding rod and a faulty pump. That disassembled pump on deck. The sounding rod left out in the open. These suggest that someone, probably the captain, had been measuring the water level in the hold and found the reading alarming. A 2007 documentary investigation found that the Mary Celeste could have drifted naturally from the Azores to where the Dei Gratia found her, on her own. with no crew. The theory: Briggs got a bad reading from a faulty pump, believed the ship was taking on too much water and about to sink, ordered everyone into the lifeboat, tethered to the ship with a long rope. Then something went wrong. A sudden squall. The rope snapped, the lifeboat capsized, and the Mary Celeste, perfectly seaworthy, simply sailed on without them. Everyone in the lifeboat drowned. No bodies, because the Atlantic is enormous and unforgiving. It's not a satisfying answer. It's not dramatic, but it might be the truth, and that's what makes it unsettling. The darker theories, and then there are the ones that don't have rational explanations. Waterspouts, rare but violent spiraling columns of water, deadly if they hit a vessel directly. A submarine earthquake, a seaquake, could send violent shockwaves through a hull, convincing those on board the ship was breaking apart when it wasn't. Some researchers have genuinely investigated both. And then, of course, there are the theories that belong firmly in the realm of legend. Sea creatures, paranormal forces, the Bermuda Triangle, even though the ship wasn't anywhere near it. None of these hold up to scrutiny. But they've never quite gone away either. The Mary Celeste might have drifted into historical obscurity, just another unsolved maritime case, if it hadn't caught the attention of one very famous writer. In 1884, a young Arthur Conan Doyle, 12 years before he'd create Sherlock Holmes, published a short story called J. Habakkuk Jeffson's Statement. He based it loosely on the Mary Celeste, misspelling the name as the Marie Celeste, a mistake so popular it stuck in common usage for over a century. His version involved an ex-slave seeking vengeance against white sailors. Dramatic, fictional, wildly inaccurate. But the public loved it. And suddenly, the Mary Celeste was famous. The case spawned novels, films, documentaries, theories, and obsessions. A 1935 movie starred Bela Lugosi as a homicidal sailor. The ship became a byword for unexplained disappearance. As for the ship herself, she didn't die with her crew. The Mary Celeste was repaired, sold, and continued sailing for another 13 years. She went through a string of owners, none of whom made money from her. And in 1885, in a final grim twist, her last captain deliberately wrecked her on a reef off the coast of Haiti, an insurance fraud scheme. Ironically, the very crime Solly Flood had accused the original crew of. It failed. The captain was caught and prosecuted. The ship that had outlived her crew was run aground on purpose. She sank in the Caribbean, and the sea kept her secrets. Here is what we know for certain. On November 7th, 1872, 10 people sailed out of New York Harbor on a merchant ship. A captain, his wife, their 2-year-old daughter, 7 experienced sailors. On December 5th, the ship was found drifting, everything intact, everyone gone. Whatever happened, it happened fast. Fast enough that nobody took their money, fast enough that nobody packed their belongings, fast enough that nobody left a message. A seaworthy ship, fully stocked, no damage, no struggle, and no one on board. The Mary Celeste didn't sink. It was abandoned. And over 150 years later, nobody knows why. There is a cenotaph in a cemetery in Marion, Massachusetts. It was placed there to remember the Briggs family, Captain Benjamin, his wife Sarah, little Sophia. Their bodies were never recovered. There was nothing to bury. Just a stone marker in a graveyard, and an empty ship that kept sailing without them, into the fog, toward a port it would never reach. The Mary Celeste has never been solved. The most credible theory, the alcohol fumes, the lifeboat, the tether snapping, is compelling, but it's still just a theory, which means that somewhere out there, among the cold facts and competing explanations, the truth is still waiting. Perhaps it always will be. Some mysteries don't resolve. They simply endure, quiet and stubborn, long after the people who lived them are gone. The sea keeps its secrets well. Until next time.